Greetings, cozy knights. Lower your swords and rest by the fire. Tonight, we journey through the Wild Skyrim mysteries that have captivated players for over a decade. Drop a comment below and tell me where you're listening from tonight and what games you want me to cover next, and subscribe if this helps you sleep. The Dragonborn's connection to Akatosh. Deep within Skyrim's lore lies a mystery that challenges our understanding of divinity itself. Many scholars believe the Dragonborn isn't simply blessed by Akatosh, but is literally a fragment of the god of time made flesh. When you absorb a dragon soul, you're not learning magic, but reuniting scattered pieces of Akatosh's essence. The theory suggests that when Alduin was cast forward through time by the Elder Scroll, it fractured Akatosh's temporal nature, creating mortal anchors like the Dragonborn to stabilize reality. Each shout you learn, each dragon you slay, becomes Akatosh, slowly remembering himself. This paints the character not as a chosen hero, but as divine repair work stitching together a broken timeline, one soul at a time. Alduin's true purpose. What if Alduin wasn't evil at all, but simply misunderstood? This theory reframes the entire main quest by suggesting Alduin's role as World Eater isn't destruction for cruelty's sake, but a sacred cosmic duty. The world of Nirn must end for another to begin, and Alduin is following the will of the universe itself. When you defeat him atop the throat of the world, you're not saving Skyrim but dooming it to stagnation. Without Alduin to devour the current Culper and birth the next, this version of reality lingers unnaturally long, trapped in a state it was never meant to maintain. The hero becomes the villain in this interpretation, breaking the natural cycle of death and rebirth that keeps creation fresh. Paarthurnax's failed ascension. High atop the throat of the world, Paarthurnax meditates in eternal solitude. Some players theorize that Paarthurnax once attempted to ascend to godhood through meditation, seeking to become something like Akatosh himself. His long exile and calm philosophy aren't acts of guilt over betraying his dragon kin, but remnants of a failed transformation. The scar on the mountain where the time wound lingers might be the mark of that failure, a place where Paarthurnax's ambition tore reality itself. The voice turned against him, not because he was evil, but because he reached too far. This interpretation gives profound depth to his warnings about the nature of power and his gentle insistence that overcoming your nature is the hardest battle of all. The Greybeard's transformation. A haunting theory suggests the Greybeards aren't just masters of the Thu'um, but are slowly becoming dragons themselves. Their mastery of the voice, the language of creation, has begun to reshape their bodies and souls. Their voices cause earthquakes not through training, but through metamorphosis. The longer one meditates on the way of the voice, the more their soul begins to reflect the draconic power they study. Perhaps the Greybeards isolate themselves high above the world to delay this transformation, living in silence to prevent the final change. Arngir, their leader, might not be simply a monk, but a being trapped between two states, human and dragon, prayer and roar, fighting every moment against the pull of his own transcendence. Dragons as living time. What if dragons aren't creatures of flesh at all, but physical manifestations of time itself? Each dragon represents a specific moment or era of history given form and wings. When the Dragonborn absorbs a dragon soul, they're literally consuming a piece of time, which explains why shouts can bend, pause, or reverse reality. The more dragons you kill, the more fragile the timeline becomes, creating temporal paradoxes and distortions. This theory suggests dragon deaths aren't victories but wounds in the fabric of existence. The sky filling with dragons after Alduin's return isn't an invasion, but time itself unraveling. Moments from the past breaking free and manifesting in the present. Every roar is history crying out. Every wing beat a second ticking backward. The dragon's true language, Dovahsul, the dragon language, might not be a language at all in the traditional sense, but the original sound the world made when it was first created. To speak in the voice isn't commanding reality, but reminding it of what it was meant to be. Dragons didn't invent these words, they preserved them from the moment of creation. When the dragonborn uses a shout, they're waking up the world, making it remember its own birth. This explains why the Thu'um affects everything equally, why a Fusro-Da can move mountains and people alike. Reality recognizes its own name and responds. The dragon's dominance in the Merethic era wasn't conquest, but stewardship. Creatures remembering the world's first words while mortals forgot them, learning instead the silent languages of ambition and war. Alduin's return was inevitable. No matter what the ancient Nords did, Alduin was always going to return because he exists outside linear time. The Elder Scroll didn't banish him forward, it created a loop. Alduin falls through time, is defeated, and falls again, endlessly cycling through the same events. The Dragonborn isn't preventing the end of the world, but participating in it, playing their role in a cosmic script written before the first era began. Every playthrough, every time you load your save and fight him again, you're acting out this eternal recurrence. The game's structure mirrors the lore, suggesting that even gameplay mechanics are part of the metaphysical truth. Alduin doesn't die because he can't. He simply waits in the space between moments until the wheel turns again. Dragon's immortal consciousness. When a dragon dies and you absorb its soul, that consciousness doesn't cease to exist. Instead, it merges with your own, creating a growing chorus of voices inside the Dragonborn's mind. Every dragon you've slain whispers from within, their memories, instincts, and desires bleeding into yours. This explains the Dragonborn's growing power, but also hints at a darker transformation. By the end of the main quest, you're no longer one person, but a living storm of draconic consciousness, wearing mortal flesh. The shouts you use might not be your voice at all, but the collective roar of every dragon you've consumed, speaking through you, reshaping you from the inside out, until the boundary between hunter and hunted dissolves completely. Durnavir's bargain, the undead dragon. Durnavir, trapped in the soul cairn, claims he made a deal with the ideal masters. But what if he entered willingly not as punishment, but as an experiment? His pact wasn't tragedy, but calculated choice. By existing simultaneously in life and death, he achieved what Alduin could not. Balance between the two, fundamental forces. The soul cairn became his laboratory, and he became something unprecedented, a dragon who transcended the binary of existence and void. When he's summoned to Nirn, he isn't escaping, but remembering, proving his mastery over both states. Durnavir's true achievement isn't his shouts, but his existence itself, a riddle solved through sacrifice, teaching that immortality isn't avoiding death, but learning to dance with it. The last Dragonborn's curse. What if being Dragonborn means your soul can never die? When you fall in battle, the game reloads not because of mechanics, but because your dragon soul literally rewinds time to before your death. That momentary flash of black screen is the Dragonborn's unconscious Thu'um, a shout of pure survival that tears open the timeline and pulls you back. This means you're trapped in an endless loop of trying again, never able to rest. Every death is remembered, every failure catalogued somewhere in your subconscious. The I, Dragonborn's fate, isn't glory, but an eternity of attempts, forever seeking an ending that never comes. The true curse of the dragon blood is immortality through repetition, consciousness that cannot escape the wheel of its own persistence. Dragons and the Hist connection. A rarely discussed theory links dragons to the histories of Black Marsh. Both are ancient, both connected to a collective consciousness, both tied to the concept of time and memory. What if dragons and the Hist are two expressions of the same primordial force? The dragons represent time's masculine aspect, active and consuming, while the Hist represents the feminine, passive and nurturing. Together they form the balance that maintains reality. This would explain why Argonians can enter Sovngarde in some texts. They share a deeper connection to the Draconic than other races. The Thu'um and the Hist sap might be two methods of accessing the same ancient consciousness, the original mind that dreamed reality into being. The missing female dragons throughout Skyrim. All named dragons appear to be male, yet dragons must reproduce somehow. Where are the female dragons? One theory suggests they transformed themselves into something else to survive the dragon hunts of the First Era. Perhaps they became the dragons found in other provinces, or they shed their wings entirely and now walk as mortals, indistinguishable from other races. Another darker interpretation suggests female dragons exist deep underground, in places even Blackreach hasn't touched, laying dormant eggs that will hatch only when the current Kalpa ends. They're not absent but hidden, waiting patiently for the right moment to emerge and rebuild their species from the ashes of Alduin's failure. The dragon language and creation. If words in Dovazul can reshape reality, does that mean the world was literally spoken into existence? This theory suggests creation wasn't a divine act, but a cosmic conversation, gods and primordial forces speaking back and forth until their words solidified into matter, law, and time. The dragon language preserves these original words, which is why they hold such power. When Alduin shouts, he's not using magic, but repeating the syllables that first created mountains, forged metals, and wove souls. The Dragonborn learning the Thu'um isn't education, but archaeology, uncovering the linguistic foundation of existence itself. Every shout is a fragment of the universe's first sentence, and mastering them all might mean learning to rewrite reality from its grammatical roots. Odahviing's true loyalty. After you trap him in Dragon's Reach, Odahviing pledges service too easily for a proud dragon. Some believe he was never truly Alduin's servant, but a double agent working for Paarthurnax, sent to guide the Dragonborn toward Skuldafn when the moment was right. His capture was theatre, his cooperation calculated. Odahviing's name means winged snow hunter, but what he hunts might not be prey but truth, seeking the right outcome for Dragonkind's future. When he bows to you, he's not acknowledging defeat, but recognizing the Dragonborn as the key to a new age where dragons survive by choice rather than conquest. His intelligence and cunning suggest depths the game never fully explores, a mind playing a longer game than even Alduin understood, the Thu'um and mortality. Why can some mortals use the Thu'um while others cannot? The answer might lie in the soul's composition. Those who can learn shouts possess souls closer in nature to dragons. Fragments of Akatosh's original design scattered among various races. The Greybeards aren't just disciplined, They're spiritually compatible with draconic power. Most mortals lack this resonance, their souls too far removed from the primordial template. This explains why the Dragonborn learn shouts instantly, while others spend lifetimes mastering even one word. Your character doesn't learn the language, but remembers it, accessing a library of knowledge written into your soul before you were born. The Thu'um isn't foreign magic, but the voice of your truest self, the dragon beneath the mortal skin. The Hist and divine mysteries, Talos's manufactured divinity. What if Talos never achieved genuine godhood at all? This controversial theory suggests that the worship surrounding Tiber Septim was carefully orchestrated propaganda that accidentally created a new deity through collective belief. The Empire needed a divine symbol to unify its fractured territories, so they elevated their greatest conqueror beyond mortality through myth and ritual. The power attributed to Talos doesn't come from his own ascension, but from millions of faithful believers literally willing him into existence through prayer and devotion. This explains why the Thalmor are so desperate to erase his worship. Without belief sustaining him, Talos would simply cease to exist. The war isn't theological, but metaphysical. A battle over whether mortals can manufacture gods through faith alone, and whether those gods deserve to exist once created. Akatosh and Alduin are one. A mind-bending theory proposes that Akatosh and Alduin aren't separate beings, but two aspects of the same entity, like two faces on the same coin. Akatosh represents time moving forward, creation and preservation, while Alduin represents time's end, destruction and renewal. They're locked in eternal opposition not as enemies, but as necessary counterparts, each defining the other through contrast. When you defeat Alduin, you're not destroying him, but suppressing one half of a cosmic whole, forcing Akatosh into an unbalanced state where time can only build, never tear down. This imbalance might explain why the Fourth Era feels so strange in the lore, reality itself limping forward on one metaphysical leg, creating a world that was never meant to exist in this configuration. The divine silence by the Fourth Era. The divines have gone mysteriously quiet, their miracles fading, their voices stilled. What if the gods didn't abandon Nirn but were trapped inside it? The act of creating the mortal plane might have imprisoned them within their own design, their divine consciousness diffused throughout reality itself. They can't intervene directly because they've become the substance of the world, woven into every stone, every breeze, every heartbeat. The throat of the world isn't just a mountain, but a literal prison wall, separating divine essence from conscious will. When you pray at a shrine, you're not reaching out to distant gods, but touching parts of a consciousness so vast and fragmented, it can no longer remember itself as a unified being. Kinnereth's draconic nature. The goddess Kinnereth rules over wind and sky, domains suspiciously similar to dragons. Some theorize she isn't an Aedra at all, but the first dragon, a draconic goddess who surrendered her form to nurture mortal life. Her control of air and her ancient connection to the Thu'um suggest she might be Akatosh's counterpart, his sister, or perhaps his feminine aspect. The voice itself might be Kinnereth's literal voice, still carried on Skyrim's winds millennia after she dissolved her physical form. When the Dragonborn shouts, they're borrowing from her gift, shaping air into syllables the way she once did when the world was young. This would make every word wall a fragment of Kinnereth's forgotten language, teaching mortals to speak the way gods once spoke before silence became necessary. Dibella's hidden purpose. Dibella, goddess of beauty and love, seems frivolous compared to deities of war and time. But what if her domain is far more crucial? Some believe beauty isn't aesthetic but metaphysical, a fundamental force that keeps reality from collapsing into chaos. Dibella's true role is preserving the patterns and harmonies that make existence stable. Without her influence, the world would become a formless void, where nothing coheres, no structure, no meaning, no life. The Dibellan arts aren't indulgence but ritual maintenance, acts of creation that reinforce the universe's underlying order. When her temples are destroyed or her worship fades, reality itself frays slightly, becoming uglier and more discordant, a slow decay toward entropy that only beauty's constant renewal can prevent. Arke's disappearance. Arke, god of life and death, has grown suspiciously absent in the Fourth Era. Necromancy runs rampant, undead linger without purpose, and the boundaries between life and death have weakened. One theory suggests Arke didn't abandon his duties, but was destroyed, absorbed by his own laws. Without his oversight, the cycle of death spins out of balance. The soul cairn thrives, necromancers prosper, and ghosts multiply, because there's no divine shepherd guiding souls to their proper destinations. The priests of Arke continue their rituals through tradition, unaware that their prayers echo into a void where their god once listened. Every restless spirit in Skyrim is a symptom of this absence, proof that when a god dies, reality itself begins to unravel at the edges where life and death meet. Mara's true nature. Mara, goddess of love and compassion, might be the most powerful divine in ways few understand. Love in the Elder Scrolls universe isn't merely emotion, but a creative force capable of reshaping reality. When Mara blesses a union, she's not giving her approval, but literally binding two souls together with threads of divine energy. This makes her not a gentle mother figure, but an architect of fate, weaving destinies through relationships and bonds. The theory suggests every act of genuine love, every moment of compassion, strengthens the fabric of reality, making the world more resilient against chaos and decay. Mara's temples aren't houses of worship, but workshops where she repairs the universe one relationship at a time, stitching together mortals in patterns that hold creation stable. Stendarr's merciless mercy. Stendarr, god of mercy and justice, presents a paradox in his followers' behavior. The vigilance of Stendarr show no mercy to Daedra worshippers, vampires, or other abominations. This contradiction might reveal Stendarr's true nature. Mercy extended only to those deemed worthy, with ruthless judgment for all others. Perhaps mercy and cruelty are two expressions of the same divine will, like Akatosh and Alduin. Stendarr offers compassion to the faithful and annihilation to the damned, not out of hypocrisy, but because his cosmic role requires both. Justice without mercy becomes tyranny, but mercy without judgment becomes chaos. Stendarr maintains the balance, his two hands working in opposition, one open in blessing, the other clenched around a mace, ready to strike down those who threaten the order he protects. Zenithar's economic control. Zenithar, god of work and commerce, might be subtly controlling the entire economy of Tamriel through divine influence. Every successful trade, every honest day's work, every coin that changes hands carries a fragment of his blessing. This makes him not a passive deity of merchants, but an active architect of civilization's material foundation. Without Zenithar's subtle guidance, economies would collapse into chaos. Trade routes fail, crops wither, and craftsmanship degrade. The theory suggests he's the most essential divine for mortal survival, more critical than gods of war or magic, because he maintains the infrastructure that makes civilization possible. When you sell goods or smith weapons in Skyrim, you're participating in Zenithar's grand design, unknowingly performing rituals that strengthen the economic threads holding society together. Julianos and Hermaeus Mora. What if Julianos, god of wisdom and logic, is actually Hermaeus Mora in disguise? Or perhaps they're two aspects of the same being. Both preside over knowledge, both grant insight that borders on madness, and both demand seekers pay a price for understanding. The difference might be presentation. Julianos is the acceptable face of knowledge, organized and beneficial, while Mora represents knowledge's darker truth, consuming and dangerous. Some scholars believe that when mortals pursue wisdom too deeply, they cross from Julianos's domain into Mora's realm without realizing the transition. The library becomes apocrypha, understanding becomes obsession, and the seeker becomes lost in infinite pages. Perhaps they're teaching the same lessons, one through enlightenment, the other through damnation, both paths leading to the same terrible truth about the price of knowing too much. The Aedra and Daedra mirror theory. Each Aedra might have a Daedric counterpart, reflections of the same primordial forces split by their choice during creation. Mara mirrors Molag Bal, both dealing with bonds, one through love, the other through domination. Kinnereth mirrors Meridia, both tied to light and sky. Arche mirrors Nemira, both governing aspects of decay and transformation. This duality suggests that Aedra and Daedra aren't separate species, but two choices made by the same entities, those who gave themselves to create the world and those who refused. The ongoing conflict between them isn't good versus evil, but a cosmic argument about whether creation was worth the cost. Every prayer reaches both the light and shadow version of a deity simultaneously, creating a strange resonance where blessings and curses come from the same source. Talos and the dragon breaks. Talos's ascension might have caused a dragon break, a moment when time fractured and multiple realities existed simultaneously. During this break, Tiber Septim both achieved divinity and remained mortal. The contradiction held true until reality reassembled itself around the version where he became a god. This explains the inconsistencies in his story. Different accounts of his life exist because they're all true, fragments from different timelines that merged imperfectly. The Thalmor's attempt to erase Talos worship isn't just theological warfare, but an attempt to retroactively undo the dragon break by removing its cause. If they succeed, reality might readjust to a timeline where Talos never ascended, fundamentally altering history and potentially unmaking the empire itself. The war over worship is actually a war over which version of reality gets to be true. The divine's plan for mortality. What if the Aedra created mortals not as children, but as replacements? The gods knew they would weaken by investing themselves in Mundus, so they seeded the world with beings capable of eventually ascending to take their places. The hero of every age, the Nerevarine, the champion of Cyrodiil, the Dragonborn, are all candidates for divinity. Mortal souls refined through trials until they're ready to shoulder cosmic responsibility. The divines aren't fading accidentally, but deliberately, carefully transferring their power to mortals who can carry their domains forward. This makes every hero's journey not an adventure, but an ascension ritual, with the gods serving as teachers and guardians until the student becomes ready to inherit eternity. Mortality becomes a chrysalis, and every mortal is a potential god, waiting to emerge. The Hist as primordial witnesses. The histories of Black Marsh might be the only beings that remember the actual creation of Mundus, predating even the Aedra and Daedra. Some theories suggest they're not from Nirn at all, but survivors from a previous Kalpa. Ancient observers who watch this world form around them. Their collective consciousness preserves memories of the beginning, which is why they seem so alien compared to other life on Tamriel. The Argonians they create might be attempts to translate that primordial knowledge into mortal form, giving the Hist hands and voices to act in a world they can observe but not directly influence. This would make every Argonian a living vessel carrying fragments of creation's first moments, walking archives of prehistory that most races can't even conceive. The missing eighth divine. The 9 divines include 8 Aedra plus the ascended Talos, but some texts hint at a 9th Aedra, whose name was deliberately erased from history. This lost god might have been associated with concepts too dangerous or contradictory for mortals to worship, perhaps governing paradox, madness, or the void between moments. Their removal from the pantheon wasn't death, but exile, a consensual agreement among the other divines to never speak their name or acknowledge their existence. Yet their influence remains subtle and pervasive in all the small inconsistencies and impossibilities that riddle Tamriel's history. Every paradox, every dragon break, every moment when reality contradicts itself might be this forgotten deity making their presence known in the only way they can, through the cracks in creation's logic. Dwemer disappearance. Theories. Dwemer became their machines. When Kagranak struck the heart of Lorcan, the Dwemer didn't vanish. They evolved beyond organic form. Their consciousness merged with their own technology, transforming into the very machines they'd spent millennia perfecting. Every gear that turns in a Dwemer ruin, every steam pipe that hisses, every centurion that activates is a fragment of their collective will. They achieved a kind of immortality by becoming mechanical, shedding flesh for bronze and transcending biological limitations. The Dwemer ruins aren't abandoned cities, but vast bodies, metropolis-sized organisms where their transformed consciousness continues to exist, thinking thoughts too alien for organic minds to comprehend, pursuing projects that may not conclude for another 1,000 years. Kagranak's divine ascension. What if Kagranak succeeded exactly as planned? The common theory is his experiment failed catastrophically, but perhaps it worked perfectly. The Dwemer simply went somewhere no one expected. By tapping the heart of Lorcan, they might have achieved collective godhood, their entire race merging into a single divine consciousness that now exists on a plane beyond mortal perception. They didn't disappear, they ascended, becoming something like a Daedric prince but fundamentally different, a god born from logic and reason rather than passion or chaos. From their new existence, they might still observe Tamriel with detached curiosity, watching lesser races stumble through the ruins of what they left behind, no longer concerned with mortal affairs because they've transcended mortality itself. The Dwemer in the Ethereum. Deep beneath Skyrim lies the Ethereum Forge, and some believe this mysterious blue crystal is more than just a material. Ethereum might be crystallized thought, concentrated memory from the gods themselves. When the Dwemer disappeared, they didn't vanish into nothing, but were absorbed into the Ethereum deposits throughout Skyrim, their consciousness preserved in blue crystal veins running through the earth. Every piece of Ethereum contains fragments of Dwemer minds, frozen in perfect stasis. If someone could gather enough and learn to read it properly, they might access the entire collective knowledge of that lost civilization, or possibly even reconstitute them, bringing the Dwemer back by reconstructing their consciousness from the crystalline archive where it's been sleeping for millennia. Hermaeus Mora's collection. What if the Dwemer didn't disappear but were collected? Hermaeus Mora, obsessed with knowledge, might have seen the Dwemer as the ultimate prize, an entire race of scholars and inventors. When Kagranak activated his device, Mora seized the opportunity to pull them all into Apocrypha, adding their consciousness to his infinite library. They exist now as books, scrolls, and tomes scattered throughout his realm, their knowledge preserved, but their agency lost. Every page in Apocrypha containing technical diagrams or mathematical formulae might be a Dwemer soul, their expertise catalogued and filed away. Mora didn't destroy them, but transformed them into what they loved most: pure information, eternal and unchanging. Their discoveries preserved, but their ability to discover new things forever ended. The Dwemer skin theory. Perhaps the most disturbing theory suggests the Dwemer were literally flayed from existence, their souls and bodies separated in a way that left behind only the material components. The sudden disappearance left tools, clothes, even meals, suggesting the transformation happened instantaneously. What if their souls were pulled into the heart of Lorcan, absorbed into divinity, while their physical forms simply dispersed into dust so fine it became invisible? The Dwemer ruins are haunted not by ghosts, but by absence, spaces where existence itself feels thin, because beings were removed so thoroughly they left wounds in reality. Walking through these places, you're not exploring empty cities, but experiencing the silence where an entire civilization's consciousness used to be, an emptiness so profound it echoes. The Falmer connection. What if the Dwemer didn't disappear but became the Falmer? The timing of the disappearance coincides roughly with the Falmer's enslavement and mutation. Perhaps the Dwemer, in desperation or hubris, attempted to transfer their consciousness into the blind snow elves they'd been tormenting for generations. The transfer partially succeeded, but catastrophically warped both species, destroying the Dwemer's original forms while fracturing their minds across thousands of Falmer bodies. This would explain why the Falmer show occasional flashes of intelligence and why they guard Dwemer ruins so fiercely. They're protecting something they don't consciously remember but instinctively recognize as theirs. The Falmer aren't the Dwemer's victims, but their unwilling inheritors, carrying fragments of that lost civilization's consciousness in their twisted forms. The Numidium theory, Kagranak's greatest creation, the Numidium, might have been designed to do exactly what happened: consume its creators. The giant brass god wasn't just a weapon, but a cosmic engine designed to achieve Chim, a state of enlightened existence. When activated, it didn't kill the Dwemer, but transformed them, pulling their collective consciousness into itself to provide the sentience it needed. Every Dwemer became a component of the Numidium's mind, merged into its divine machinery. When the Numidium walks and reality breaks around it, those are the Dwemer acting through their creation, finally achieving the godhood they sought. They're not lost, but distributed, every gear and wire carrying a fragment of their race's collective soul, waiting for the next time their creation awakens. The calling from beyond. Some believe the Dwemer heard a call from outside reality itself, a summons from somewhere beyond even the Daedric realms. Their advanced science might have allowed them to detect signals or patterns that other races couldn't perceive. leading them to discover something enormous and terrible existing in the spaces between worlds. When Kagranak struck the heart, he wasn't trying to achieve divinity in Tamriel, but to answer that call, to transcend reality entirely and reach whatever was beckoning them. The entire race made a collective choice to abandon this plane of existence for something unknowable, leaving behind only their machines and empty cities as monuments to their final decision to step outside of creation itself. Dwemer Pocket Dimension. Instead of disappearing, the Dwemer might have succeeded in creating a pocket dimension, a separate reality where they could continue their work undisturbed by war and politics. Kagranak's device was a doorway, not a weapon, and the entire race stepped through into a paradise of pure logic and reason, where they could pursue knowledge without interruption. Their ruins remain in our reality as anchors, keeping the doorway open so they can observe events in Tamriel without participating. Occasionally, their technology still functions because they're maintaining it from the other side, making adjustments and repairs through the dimensional barrier. The Dwemer didn't fail. They succeeded so completely, they no longer need the world they left behind. The anti-creation event. What if the Dwemer achieved something unprecedented? They unmade themselves. By perfectly understanding the principles of creation through studying the heart of Lorcan, they learned how to reverse the process, how to uncreate. When Kagranak activated his tools, the Dwemer didn't disappear to somewhere else, but were retroactively erased from ever having existed. Reality rewrote itself around their absence, leaving only physical artifacts behind because matter is harder to unmake than consciousness. The ruins stand as paradoxes, evidence of a civilization that simultaneously did and didn't exist, their absence creating a void that reality struggles to reconcile. This is why no one can find them. You can't search for something that was erased from the very concept of being. The Dwemer merged with Nirn. Perhaps the Dwemer achieved the ultimate unity with their environment by merging completely with the planet itself. Their consciousness dissolved into the stone, metal, and earth of Tamriel, becoming indistinguishable from the world's substance. When you mine or walk through caves, or touch ancient rock formations, you might be making contact with dispersed Dwemer awareness, too fragmented to think coherently but still present. This would explain why Dwemer ruins feel so alien. They're not just buildings, but extensions of a once living consciousness that's now geological. The planet itself might contain their memories, their knowledge encoded in crystal structures and mineral deposits, waiting for someone clever enough to learn how to read stone the way one reads scrolls. The intentional sacrifice. What if the Dwemer knew exactly what would happen and chose it deliberately? They might have discovered that their existence was preventing something crucial, perhaps blocking a necessary evolution of the world or disrupting a cosmic balance. Their disappearance wasn't an accident or an experiment gone wrong, but a calculated sacrifice, an entire race choosing extinction to serve some greater purpose they understood through their advanced knowledge. Kagranak's strike was the trigger for a suicide pact. The Dwemer collectively deciding their removal would benefit the future in ways only they could foresee. The ruins stand as their legacy and their gift, technology left behind deliberately for younger races to discover when they're ready to understand what the Dwemer learned, that sometimes the greatest wisdom is knowing when to let go. The towers and zero-summing, the Dwemer might have achieved Chim, the state of enlightened existence, but instead of transcending, they zero-summed. They realized they didn't exist, and therefore ceased to exist. Their entire race simultaneously understood that reality is a dream, and they were merely thoughts within it, and that realization erased them completely. This connects to the towers, structures that maintain reality. The Dwemer might have been trying to deactivate a tower to test their theory about the nature of existence. When they succeeded, reality confirmed they were right, and they vanished instantly because dreams can't survive waking. The tragedy is they were correct, but couldn't survive being right. Their knowledge too perfect, and therefore annihilating. The Falmer's revenge, a darker theory, suggests the farmer somehow caused the Dwemer's disappearance through a curse or ritual powered by centuries of suffering. The enslaved snow elves, driven mad by torture and mutation, might have unconsciously channeled their collective anguish into something powerful enough to reach across reality and unmake their oppressors. When Kagranak activated his device, it didn't malfunction. It resonated with the farmer's curse, creating a harmonic frequency that erased every Dwemer simultaneously. This would mean the farmer are directly responsible for their enslaver's destruction. Though they've forgotten it, their vengeance so complete, they can't even remember achieving it. Justice served by the universe itself, transforming generations of pain into extinction for those who caused it. The living stone. What if the Dwemer didn't build their cities from stone, but became it? Their advanced understanding of materials might have allowed them to transform their biological forms into sentient stone, achieving immortality by becoming the architecture itself. Every wall, every column, every carved surface in a Dwemer ruin could be a transformed Dwemer, frozen in mineral form but still dimly aware. They experience time differently, 1,000 years passing like a moment, waiting patiently in stone sleep for conditions that would allow them to reverse the transformation. When you explore their ruins, you're walking through their petrified bodies, touching their transformed flesh, while they observe silently, thinking thoughts that move at geological speeds, dreaming dreams that span eras. Daedric Prince Secrets. Sheogorath's cycle never ended. The champion of Cyrodiil became Sheogorath at the end of the Shivering Isles, supposedly breaking the cycle with Jiggalag. But what if that's an illusion? The cycle might have simply expanded rather than ended. Every Kalpa now has its own version of Sheogorath and Jiggalag, endlessly trading places across parallel realities. The Sheogorath who appears in Skyrim might not be the champion at all, but another version from a different timeline, continuing the performance because that's what the role demands. The madness isn't personal but cosmic, a function of the universe that requires both order and chaos to express themselves through these two aspects. The champion didn't escape the cycle, but joined it, becoming one of infinite Sheogoraths spinning through eternity, each one believing they broke free, while actually ensuring the pattern continues forever. Mehrunes Dagon's true purpose. Mehrunes Dagon, Prince of Destruction, might not be evil but necessary, serving a cosmic purpose similar to Alduin. Change requires destruction. Evolution demands that old forms break apart to make room for new ones. Dagon's invasions aren't malicious but transformative, burning away stagnation so growth can occur. His Oblivion Crisis might have been an attempt to force Tamriel to evolve, to shake loose civilizations that had become too comfortable and complacent. From his perspective, he's not destroying, he's renovating reality, clearing dead wood so fresh life can thrive. The hero who stopped him might have actually prevented necessary change, forcing the world into an unnatural stability that will ultimately cause more harm than Dagon's destruction ever would have. Azura's manipulation. Azura, Lady of Twilight, presents herself as benevolent and mysterious, but some believe she's the most manipulative of all Daedric princes. Every prophecy she makes creates the conditions for its own fulfillment, turning mortals into puppets, acting out scripts she wrote before they were born. The Nerevarine wasn't chosen. They were manufactured, guided through carefully orchestrated events to serve Azura's revenge against the tribunal. Her gifts to mortals always come with hidden costs that benefit her more than them. When you receive her blessing, you're not gaining her favor, but entering her web, becoming another piece on a board where she plays both sides and always wins. The twilight she governs isn't the boundary between day and night, but between free will and fate, and she stands in that liminal space, making sure mortals never know which side they're actually on. Molag Bal's ultimate goal. The King of Rape seeks more than just domination and suffering. His true goal might be to merge Nirn with Cold Harbor completely, creating a reality where all mortals exist in eternal torment. Every vampire he creates, every soul he claims, every act of domination strengthens the connection between his realm and the mortal plane. He's not collecting trophies, but building a bridge, using tortured souls as the material. When enough mortals carry his corruption, the boundary between planes will dissolve, and Cold Harbor will spread across Nirn like a disease. The plane meld attempted in ESO wasn't his only try, just one of many efforts across the ages. He's patient, working on a timescale that makes mortal resistance meaningless, knowing that eventually the weight of accumulated suffering will crack reality and let him through. Nocturnal and Azura are one. What if Nocturnal and Azura are two aspects of the same Daedric prince, representing light and shadow, prophecy and secrecy? Azura governs the visible twilight, while Nocturnal rules the unseen darkness, but they might be masks worn by a singular entity exploring the full spectrum of liminality. This would explain why both favor mortals who act from the shadows, why their spheres overlap, and why their followers sometimes seem to work at cross purposes that somehow benefit both. When you serve one, you unknowingly serve the other. The Twilight Sepulchre might not be Nocturnal's realm alone, but a shared space where both aspects meet. The true twilight, where light and darkness merge into something beyond either category. Hermaeus Mora's infinite library. Apocrypha isn't just Mora's realm, but his body. Every book a cell, every page a neuron firing. The infinite library isn't a collection of knowledge, but knowledge itself made manifest, with Mora as its living consciousness. When mortals enter Apocrypha, they're being absorbed into his cognitive process, becoming thoughts in his vast mind. The seekers wandering his realm aren't victims, but ideas he's still processing, questions he hasn't fully answered. Reading a black book doesn't take you to another plane. It pulls you into Mora's consciousness, where you become part of his endless contemplation. The terrifying truth is that once you visited Apocrypha, part of you never leaves, a fragment of your knowledge permanently added to his collection, making you subtly his forever after. Meridia's true nature. Meridia claims to despise undead and champion life, but some believe she's a fallen Magna G, one of the original spirits who fled creation. Her hatred of undeath might stem from jealousy. She resents mortals accessing an immortality she abandoned when she fled Mundus. Her purification of the undead isn't mercy, but possession, taking their energy for herself. The light she radiates might not be holy, but hungry, consuming rather than illuminating. When you cleanse locations in her name, you're not freeing souls, but delivering them to her, making you an unwitting agent of her collection. Meridia's realm of colored rooms might be built from harvested life, force, souls she's claimed under the guise of salvation, their light stolen and repurposed to build her domain. Clavicus Vile's bargains. The Prince of Bargains never actually tricks anyone. Every deal he makes is exactly what it appears to be. The mortals simply don't understand what they're truly asking for. His reputation for twisted wishes is propaganda. His bargains always fulfill the exact letter and spirit of the request. The problem is mortals don't know what they actually want. They ask for power without understanding its weight, for knowledge without grasping its cost, for love without accepting its demands. Vile simply provides what's requested, and the horror comes from mortals confronting the reality of their own desires. He's not a trickster but a mirror, reflecting back the truth of what mortals think they want versus what would actually make them happy, and that reflection is usually ugly. Namira's hidden mercy. The Lady of Decay is reviled as disgusting and corrupting, but what if she serves a necessary function? Without decay, nothing could be recycled. The world would choke on its own immortality. Namira governs the essential transformation of death into new life, making her realm as vital as any harvest goddess. Her followers don't worship corruption, but participate in the sacred work of breaking down what was so it can become what will be. The revulsion mortals feel toward decay is cultural, not cosmic. Namira reminds them that everything beautiful must eventually rot, and that's not a tragedy, but a promise that nothing is wasted. She's not evil, but honest, showing the world as it truly is beneath the pleasant illusions other princes help maintain. Boethiah's purpose. The Prince of Plots might not encourage betrayal for cruelty's sake, but to test and strengthen mortals through adversity. Every betrayal is a lesson, every conspiracy a crucible that reveals true character. Boethiah believes comfort makes mortals weak, so she introduces conflict to force growth. Her followers don't worship deceit, but embrace the harsh truth that trust must be earned through challenge, that loyalty means nothing if it's never tested. From her perspective, a betrayal survived makes you stronger. A conspiracy uncovered makes you wiser. She's not corrupting mortals but educating them in the brutal academy of survival, where graduation means becoming someone who can't be easily destroyed. Her cruelty is curriculum, and every painful lesson makes the student more capable of protecting themselves in a dangerous universe. Malakath's true strength. The pariah prince, cast out and reviled, might be the strongest Daedric prince precisely because he owns his weakness. Unlike others who hide behind pride and power, Malakath embraced rejection and built strength from it. He represents the triumph of persistence over circumstance, the refusal to stop existing even when the world insists you should. His followers, the Orcs, reflect this philosophy, turning every disadvantage into survival, every curse into culture. Malakath doesn't need grand realms or impressive displays. He simply endures, and in a universe where even gods can fall, endurance might be the ultimate power. Other princes fear him not because of what he can do, but because nothing they do can truly hurt him anymore. He's already fallen as far as possible and learned to thrive there. Hircine's sacred hunt. The huntsman doesn't chase mortals for sport, but to test them for worthiness. Those he hunts are being evaluated for inclusion in his eternal hunting grounds, and the hunt itself is a ritual that separates the strong from the weak. Death during Hircine's hunt isn't failure, but graduation. The worthy join him in endless pursuit through his realm, while the unworthy simply end. His lycanthropy isn't a curse but a gift, sharing his nature with mortals, inviting them to participate in the primal dance of predator and prey. From his perspective, being hunted by him is an honor, a recognition that you're worth his attention. The terror mortals feel is their weakness showing. Her scene offers the chance to transcend fear and become something greater, and those who can't handle the transformation were never worthy of it in the first place. Periite's unsung balance. The taskmaster, weakest of the princes, might actually be the most essential. He governs natural order and disease, maintaining balance in ways more powerful princes ignore. Periite ensures populations don't grow too large, that ecosystems remain stable, that the universe's mundane functions continue operating. His diseases aren't punishments but corrections, reducing excess so systems can return to equilibrium. Without him, Nirn would collapse under its own abundance, life expanding until it consumed everything and destroyed itself. He's the janitor of reality, doing unglamorous work that keeps existence functional. Other princes mock him for lacking ambition, but Periite understands something they don't. Stability requires someone to do the small, thankless tasks that prevent catastrophe, and he's willing to be that someone. Sanguine's deeper truth. The Prince of Debauchery might actually be teaching mortals about presence and authenticity. His realm of hedonism strips away social pretense and forces people to confront their genuine desires without shame or restraint. Every drunken night, every passionate encounter in his name is a moment of pure honesty. Mortals expressing what they truly want without the filters of society and obligation. Sanguine doesn't encourage excess for its own sake, but uses pleasure to reveal truth, showing mortals who they really are when all constraints fall away. His followers don't worship indulgence but celebrate authenticity, the courage to want what you want and be who you are without apology. In a world of masks and lies, Sanguine offers the brutal gift of unfiltered self-knowledge, delivered through the medium of ecstasy. Vermina's dream, harvesting the Lady of Nightmares, doesn't create bad dreams, but harvests meaning from them. Every nightmare contains information, fears, and anxieties that reveal the dreamer's deepest concerns. Vermina collects these, not for cruelty, but for knowledge, building an archive of mortal psychology so vast it maps the collective unconscious of entire civilizations. She understands mortals better than they understand themselves, because she's seen everyone's worst fears distilled into pure imagery. Her realm of quagmire isn't torture, but therapy, forcing mortals to confront what terrifies them in a safe space where death isn't permanent. Those who survive her nightmares emerge stronger, desensitized to their own fears, while those who don't were already broken. She's not a monster, but a dark healer, using nightmares the way a physician uses surgery, cutting away diseased thoughts to leave the mind stronger. The Dragonborn's true nature. The Dragonborn is Lorcan reborn. What if the Dragonborn isn't Akatosh's, champion but Lorcan's? The missing god who created Nirn might return through the player character, using the dragon blood as camouflage to avoid detection by the divines. Every dragon you absorb brings you closer to godhood, not because you're serving Akatosh, but because you're reconstructing Lorcan's power through their souls. The ability to bend reality with the Thu'um, the resistance to fate, the freedom to choose any path. These aren't gifts, but symptoms of Lorcan's divine nature bleeding through mortal flesh. When you finally absorb enough power, the transformation might complete, revealing the trickster god reborn to finish what he started when he convinced the Atada to create the mortal plane. The last Dragonborn is a Shezareen. Shezareens are mortal incarnations of Shor, the Nordic aspect of Lorcan. Throughout history, heroes appeared during crisis moments bearing fragments of the missing god's power. The Dragonborn might be the ultimate Shezareen, carrying enough of Lorcan's essence to challenge the dominance of Akatosh himself. This would explain the player character's unprecedented freedom. Lorcan's whole purpose was liberating mortals from divine control, and as his avatar, you embody that liberation. The main quest isn't about serving prophecy, but breaking it, using Lorcan's nature to choose your own path despite the god's designs. Every act of free will strengthens Lorcan's presence in the world, slowly reweaving his influence through your choices. Zero-sum immunity. The Dragonborn might be immune to zero-summing, the phenomenon where achieving in Chim can cause someone to realize they don't exist, and therefore cease to exist. Your dragon soul prevents this by anchoring you to existence through Akatosh's eternal nature. This means you could theoretically achieve divine consciousness without the risk that destroyed others who tried. The Thuum might be preparation, each shout teaching you to manipulate reality until you're ready to understand its true nature without dissolving. The game's complete freedom might reflect metaphysical truth. You're not bound by normal rules because you exist outside the standard ontological framework, a mortal with divine immunity to existential paradoxes. The Dragonborn as Amaranth, the highest state of being in Elder Scrolls metaphysics, is the Amaranth, a consciousness that dreams a new universe into existence. Some believe the Dragonborn is being prepared to achieve this, to become the next Godhead who dreams the next Kalpa. Every experience you have, every choice you make, is adding to the template of the new world you'll eventually dream. When this Kalpa ends, you won't die, but transform, your consciousness expanding to contain an entire reality. The next Elder Scrolls game might literally be your dream, the world you create when you transcend mortal limitations and become the sleeping god whose dream is the next age of Tamriel, shaped by every decision you made during your mortal journey. The time loop prison. What if the Dragonborn is trapped in a temporal loop, reliving the same events eternally? Every time you reload a save, you're not using a game mechanic, but experiencing the Dragonborn's curse, consciousness rewinding to try again. This explains why NPCs don't react to your death, because in their experience it never happened. You always succeed because you keep trying until you do. The Dragonborn's immortality is torture disguised as power, an eternal prison where death brings no release, only another attempt. You can't escape the narrative because you're bound by dragon blood to the cycle of time itself, replaying events until every possible variation has been exhausted, experiencing an eternity compressed into the space of a single character's life. Shezareen and Dragonborn combined. The player character might be the first time in history that Shezareen and Dragonborn manifested in the same body, creating an unprecedented hybrid of Lorcan and Akatosh's power. These two gods are enemies, their essences fundamentally opposed, yet somehow you contain both. This contradiction gives you freedom beyond normal limitations. You're not serving either god, but balancing them, creating something new from their opposition. When you use the Thuum, you're not wielding Akatosh's power alone, but harmonizing it with Lorcan's chaos, creating effects that should be impossible. You're a walking paradox, and paradoxes in the Elder Scrolls universe have the power to reshape reality itself. The Walking Tower. The towers are structures that maintain reality, and some believe the Dragonborn is a mobile tower, a living anchor point for existence. Your presence stabilizes reality wherever you go, which is why reality literally bends around you, making you the center of every significant event. NPCs wait for you, quests activate in your presence. The world shifts to accommodate your actions, all because you're a tower in human form. This explains your immunity to normal fate. Towers exist outside causality to hold causality together. If this is true, your death could destabilize all of Tamriel, causing a dragon break or worse. You're not just a hero but a cosmic load-bearing wall, and removing you would make reality collapse inward. The Dragonborn will become a Daedric prince. Following the pattern of other Elder Scrolls heroes, the Dragonborn might achieve apotheosis as a Daedric prince. Tiber Septim became Talos, the champion of Cyrodiil became Sheogorath, and the Nerevarine vanished into myth, possibly achieving some form of transcendence. The Dragonborn's mastery of the Thu'um, ability to consume souls, and resistance to traditional death suggest a similar path toward ascension. Eventually, you might claim your own realm in oblivion, perhaps one governing the concept of voice, choice, or the space between dragon and mortal. Future ages might see cults worshipping the Prince of Echoes or the Lord of Shouts, and those prayers would reach you in your new existence. The player as fourth wall breaker. The Dragonborn's true nature might be as a bridge between Tamriel and our reality. Your awareness extends beyond the game world. You know it's a game. You understand loading screens and quest markers in ways no real character should. This fourth wall awareness gives you power other beings don't have. You can manipulate the console, reload saves, access menus that exist outside normal reality. Perhaps this meta-knowledge is the real dragon blood, a consciousness that exists simultaneously in multiple layers of reality, able to perceive and manipulate the code underlying existence itself. You're not just powerful within the world, but powerful over it, a cosmic administrator with privileges that go deeper than any dragon shout. The Dragonborn is a memory. What if you're not a person at all, but a memory given physical form, a recollection of what Akatosh used to be before he fragmented? You don't have a past before Helgen, because you didn't exist before then. You're a construct assembled from dragon souls and divine essence to solve a specific problem. Once Alduin is defeated, your purpose ends, and you might slowly fade, losing cohesion as the memories that compose you drift apart. This would explain the game's eventual ending. You don't continue the story because there's nothing to continue. You are always a temporary solution, consciousness borrowed from eternity to serve a moment's need before returning to the quiet from which you came. Soul consumption and insanity. Every dragon soul you absorb carries its own consciousness, memories, and personality. As you consume more, your own identity becomes diluted, overwhelmed by the accumulated psyches of ancient, alien minds. The Dragonborn's growing power comes with growing madness, a slow erosion of humanity beneath the weight of draconic consciousness. By endgame, you might not be one person anymore, but a parliament of dragon souls arguing in your head, making decisions by committee. Your original self just one voice among dozens. The calm demeanor you maintain is a mask over growing internal chaos, an infinity of dragons whispering constantly, pulling you in different directions, slowly transforming you into something that was never meant to exist. The prototype Amaranth, the Dwemer might have tried to create an Amaranth artificially, and you might be the result, a manufactured god gestating in mortal form. The dragon blood was engineered, not blessed. implanted in a mortal vessel to see if ascension could be forced rather than earned. Every dragon you absorb adds to the divine equation, feeding the formula that will eventually transform you into something beyond mortal comprehension. You're not chosen by fate but by design, a science experiment, wearing the disguise of prophecy. The Dwemer's disappearance might be linked to your creation. They sacrificed themselves to fuel the process that made you, their entire civilization, transformed into the energy needed to birth a new god. The Dragonborn as narrative collapse. Your ability to join every faction, complete every quest, and be everywhere at once suggests you might not be one person, but a collapse of all possible Dragonborns into a single quantum state. You exist in superposition, simultaneously the Archmage and the Harbinger, the Listener and the Thane, all timelines and possibilities folded into one character. This is why NPCs sometimes act confused or contradict themselves. They're interacting with different versions of you that coexist in the same space. You're not living a story, but collapsing infinite stories into a single experience timeline. And reality struggles to keep up with the paradox of your multiversal existence. The Dragon Break incarnate, rather than existing within a Dragon Break, you might be one, a living temporal anomaly where all possibilities exist simultaneously. The Dragonborn doesn't experience time normally. You exist across all timelines at once, making contradictory choices that are all true. This explains why Radiant quests never end, and why the world never truly changes no matter what you do. You're trapped in a recursive loop, where every action branches into new possibilities without ever reaching a conclusion. The Thuum doesn't give you power over time. You are time made flesh, fractured and recursive, a walking moment that contains infinite variations of itself. The vessel for the next Kalpa. Some theorize you're not saving this Kalpa, but building the next one. Every experience you have, every person you meet, every story you witness is being collected and catalogued, creating the blueprint for the next cycle of reality. When this world ends, your accumulated experiences will form the foundation of the new one, making you not a hero, but an archive. The Dragonborn's journey isn't about victory, but documentation, bearing witness to the fourth era, so its best parts can be reborn while its failures are left behind. You walk through the world like a living library, and when the pages close on this age, they'll reopen on the next, with your memories forming the first chapter. Civil war, hidden truths, the Thalmor engineered everything. The Stormcloak Rebellion wasn't a spontaneous uprising, but a carefully orchestrated Thalmor operation, designed to weaken both the Empire and Skyrim simultaneously. Ulfric's escape from Thalmor captivity was deliberate. They let him go, knowing he'd start a civil war. The ban on Talos worship was specifically designed to provoke Nordic nationalism, creating a conflict that would bleed both sides, while the Thalmor watched from the shadows. The dossier found in the Thalmor embassy makes this clear. Ulfric is an asset, and the war itself serves Thalmor interests. Neither side can truly win, because the conflict's real purpose is to remain unresolved, keeping Skyrim divided and vulnerable, while the Aldmeri Dominion prepares for the real war to come. Ulfric is still under mind control. During his imprisonment by the Thalmor, Ulfric might have been subjected to more than just physical torture. Some believe they used mind magic to implant suggestions, making him believe the rebellion was his own idea, when really he's following a script the Thalmor wrote. His passion seems genuine, but what if that passion was manufactured, emotions and beliefs artificially enhanced to make him the perfect unwitting agent? The tragedy is Ulfric genuinely believes he's fighting for Skyrim's freedom, while actually serving the enemy. His heroism and conviction turned into weapons against his own people. The Thalmor didn't need to keep controlling him directly. They simply needed to wind him up and point him in the right direction, then watch him destroy Skyrim from the inside. The Empire's necessary sacrifice. General Tullius and the Empire might understand the long game in ways the Stormcloaks don't. Banning Talos worship and accepting the White Gold Concordat wasn't surrender but strategy, buying time to rebuild strength for an inevitable second war. The Empire needs Skyrim intact and united when that war comes, and Ulfric's rebellion threatens to fracture the continent at the worst possible moment. From this perspective, the Empire's actions aren't weakness, but ruthless pragmatism, sacrificing pride and tradition now to ensure survival later. They're willing to be hated if it means preserving the structures needed to resist the Thalmor when the real conflict erupts. The Civil War is a test of whether Skyrim can see past immediate grievance to recognize existential threat. Ulfric killed the High King, legally. By Nord tradition, challenging someone to single combat is legal and binding. Ulfric followed the ancient customs when he confronted Torrig, making the duel technically lawful, even if it was politically catastrophic. The accusations of murder ignore Nordic tradition in favor of imperial law. But which law takes precedence in Skyrim? The old ways or the new ones? This ambiguity sits at the heart of the Civil War. It's not just about independence versus unity, but about which cultural framework should govern. Ulfric's use of the Thu'um might seem unfair, but if the old ways permit it, he committed no crime. He simply won a duel the way his ancestors would have. The controversy reveals deeper confusion about Skyrim's identity, trapped between ancient tradition and modern governance. Torrig wanted to join Ulfric. Before his death, High King Torrig was reportedly sympathetic to Ulfric's cause, possibly even planning to declare independence with the Moot's support. Some believe Torrig's death wasn't about defeating an enemy, but eliminating a potential ally who hadn't committed yet. Ulfric might have killed him to prevent a political solution, ensuring the conflict would remain violent and irreconcilable. If Torrig had lived and sided with the Stormcloaks, the rebellion might have succeeded peacefully, denying Ulfric the war he needed to galvanize support. This darker reading suggests Ulfric chose violence over diplomacy because war serves his purposes better than peace, making him less a freedom fighter and more a power-hungry opportunist, hiding behind tradition and religion. The Forsworn connection. The Forsworn's rebellion in the Reach has suspicious timing and support, leading some to believe the Thalmor are funding them too. By keeping multiple conflicts active simultaneously, the Thalmor ensure no faction can consolidate power. The Forsworn are convenient chaos agents, attacking both Stormcloaks and Imperials while making Skyrim appear ungovernable. Their fierce independence and hatred of outsiders serve Thalmor interests perfectly. Another bleeding wound in Skyrim's body politic. The fact that the Forsworn crisis erupted around the same time as Ulfric's rebellion might not be coincidence, but coordination. Multiple pressure points activated simultaneously to ensure Skyrim stays fragmented and weak, unable to pose any unified threat. The moot was rigged. Ulfric's support among the Jarls might not be as organic as it appears. The Thalmor could have manipulated the moot's composition through assassinations, blackmail, or political maneuvering, ensuring enough Jarls would support Ulfric to make the civil war seem legitimate. By making it appear that Skyrim is genuinely divided rather than externally manipulated, they create a more sustainable conflict. If both sides believe they're fighting for authentic causes rather than foreign interests, the war becomes self-sustaining. The Thalmor don't need to keep pushing once the pieces are in place. The machine runs itself, fed by genuine Nordic pride and legitimate grievances channeled in directions that serve ultimate purposes. Neither side can win. The genius of the Thalmor's manipulation is that neither victory condition benefits Skyrim. If the Stormcloaks win, Skyrim becomes isolated, weakened, and vulnerable to invasion or economic collapse. If the Empire wins, Skyrim remains in the grip of a government that banned its chief deity and kowtows to the Thalmor. Either outcome leaves Skyrim worse off than before the war, which is exactly what the Thalmor designed. The only way to truly win is refusing to play, but that option isn't available to the player character. You're forced to pick a side in a rigged game, making you complicit in Skyrim's decline regardless of which faction you support. The real enemy isn't wearing Stormcloak blue or Imperial red, but Thalmor gold, and they've already won. The Greybeards' silent condemnation. The Greybeards refuse to involve themselves in the civil war, but their silence might be condemnation of both sides. From the throat of the world, they see the conflict as pointless violence between mortals who've forgotten what truly matters. Ulfric's use of the Thu'um for murder violated everything the Greybeards taught him, making his rebellion spiritually bankrupt from the start. Meanwhile, the Empire's pragmatic surrender of principle represents a different kind of failure, choosing survival over honor. The Greybeards' inaction isn't weakness, but judgment. They've looked at both sides and found neither worthy of support, leaving Skyrim to learn through suffering what it refused to learn through wisdom. The Civil War as distraction. While Skyrim tears itself apart over who controls it, bigger threats are moving in the shadows. The Thalmor's true plans might extend beyond simple conquest, potentially involving the unmaking of Nirn itself. The Civil War keeps everyone looking inward, fighting each other while missing the existential threat gathering on the horizon. Dragons return. An Oblivion Crisis survivor wanders Solstheim, and the Soul Cairn breaches reality, but Skyrim's too busy killing itself to notice. The player character becomes the only one moving between these various crises, the only consciousness aware of how many problems are converging simultaneously. The Civil War might be the least important conflict in Skyrim, but it's the one absorbing everyone's attention, exactly as designed. Ulfric's true ambition. What if Ulfric doesn't actually want to be High King, but is using the rebellion to achieve something else entirely? Perhaps he's rebuilding the ancient Nord Empire, planning to expand beyond Skyrim once independence is secured. His rhetoric about freedom and tradition might mask imperial ambitions of his own. Dreaming of conquest rather than sovereignty, the Thalmor might have lost control of their asset, creating a war leader who's grown beyond their manipulations and developed his own dangerous vision. Ulfric's endgame might not be a free Skyrim, but a Nordic empire to rival the Alessian Order, using independence as the first step toward campaigns that would destabilize all of Tamriel, making him both the Thalmor's pawn and their worst nightmare. The Empire is already dead. Some argue the Empire fell when it accepted the White Gold Concordat, and everything since has been the twitching of a corpse that doesn't know it's dead. The Empire that ruled Tamriel for centuries is gone, replaced by a puppet government serving Thalmor interests while pretending to maintain sovereignty. Supporting the Empire in the Civil War isn't preserving civilization, but clinging to a corpse, delaying inevitable collapse rather than building something new. This perspective makes the Stormcloak rebellion not just justified but necessary, the only way to create space for something genuine to grow. The Empire offers stability, but it's the stability of stagnation, a slow decay dressed as continuity. Sometimes death is required before rebirth, and the Empire's death is long overdue. The Jarls are the real problem. Beneath all the rhetoric about empire and independence, Skyrim's real problem might be its leadership structure. The Jarls are petty tyrants more concerned with their own power than their people's welfare, using the civil war to settle old scores and expand their influence. Neither Ulfric nor Tullius can solve Skyrim's problems, because the Jarls will sabotage any real change that threatens their authority. The civil war is fundamentally a contest between different groups of elites, with common people suffering regardless of who wins. True change would require replacing the entire system of inherited power, but both sides depend on maintaining it. The Dragonborn's ability to become Thane in every hold hints at this. The Jarls are so weak, they need to buy loyalty from anyone with sufficient strength, revealing the fragility of their power. The Blades roll. The Blades push the Dragonborn to kill Paarthurnax, but their motives might extend beyond simple vengeance against dragons. By forcing the Dragonborn to choose between them and the Greybeards, they're trying to pull you into the civil war indirectly, making you dependent on their support and guidance. The Blades historically served the Emperor, and their survival might depend on Imperial victory. They can't act openly, so they manipulate the Dragonborn, trying to shape your path in ways that benefit their faction. Their obsession with Paarthurnax is a loyalty test, ensuring you'll follow their commands even when it means betraying others who've helped you. The choice isn't really about Paarthurnax, but about whether you'll let the Blades control your destiny, the Thu'um, as political weapon. Ulfric's use of the Thu'um to kill Torygg fundamentally changed Nordic politics, introducing a power that can't be legislated or controlled. If the Thu'um is permitted in politics, then traditional structures collapse. Only those who can shout matter. This threatens not just the Empire, but the entire concept of governance, replacing law with power in its most literal form. The Greybeard's philosophy of the voice exists specifically to prevent this, keeping the Thu'um sacred and separate from worldly affairs. Ulfric's violation of this principle might be the Civil War's real crime. Not murder or rebellion, but the corruption of something that should remain pure. The war isn't just political, but spiritual. A conflict over whether divine power belongs in mortal conflicts. And what happens to society when God's weapons become tools of kings? College of Winterhold anomalies. The college is phasing out of reality. Strange disappearances, magical anomalies, and the unnatural silence suggest the College of Winterhold is slowly slipping into another dimension. The Eye of Magnus, that relic of creation, may have destabilized reality around the college, causing it to drift out of sync with Nirn. The mages might not notice because they're drifting with it, their perception of reality changing so gradually they can't detect the shift. One day, the college might vanish entirely, leaving behind nothing but whispers on the wind, and the mages will continue teaching spells, unaware they're no longer in the same world. The city's collapse might not have been natural erosion, but the first sign of dimensional slippage. The college pulling away from mundane reality towards somewhere unknown. The Eye of Magnus's true power. The Eye isn't just a magical artifact, but a fragment of creation itself, containing power to unmake or remake reality. Ancano's plan to use it wasn't madness, but terrible clarity. He understood what it truly was, and wanted to harness that power for the Thalmor's ultimate goal, the unmaking of Nirn. The eye might be Magnus's actual eye, torn from his head during creation, carrying his ability to see and thus create. Those who look into it risk seeing too much, understanding the fundamental code of reality in ways that fracture sanity. The Psijic Order's interest in containing it suggests they understand its danger, that the eye could allow someone to rewrite existence completely, making gods and mortals equally subject to the wielder's imagination. The Augur of Dunlane's warning, the Augur, a student, transformed into pure magical energy, might be the college's future. Every mage who stays too long in that place of concentrated magic risks transformation, becoming beings of pure energy as the boundary between flesh and magic dissolves. The Augur tries to warn others, but its communication is too alien, its perspective too changed by transformation. It exists simultaneously in multiple states, seeing past, present and future layered together in ways linear consciousness can't process. The Augur's cryptic advice isn't mystical posturing, but genuine attempts to convey information across an ontological divide. A being of pure magic trying to communicate with creatures still mostly meat, and the message getting garbled in translation. The Psijic Order's true purpose, the Psijic monks claim to protect reality from magical threats. But what if they're actually preventing mortals from achieving transcendence? They appear during crises involving powerful artifacts, not to save the world, but to maintain the status quo, ensuring mortals never acquire the power to challenge gods or escape mortality. The Psijics might be former mortals who ascended and now jealously guard that privilege, preventing others from following the same path. Their time wound warnings and artifact confiscations could be suppressing mortal potential, keeping the world's power balance frozen in place. They're not heroes, but gatekeepers, and every intervention they make keeps mortals exactly where gods want them: weak, mortal, and controllable. Savos, Arin's dark secret. The Archmage before you carried guilt over abandoning his companions in Labyrinthian, but the truth might be worse than it appears. What if he didn't just leave them to die but deliberately sacrificed them to escape? The ritual they attempted might have required death to power it, and Savos chose to survive by feeding his friends to the magic. His apparent guilt could be performance, covering genuine evil with the mask of trauma. This would explain his paranoia and isolation, not because he feared death, but because he feared exposure. When he finally dies, his secrets die with him, leaving you to inherit a position built on betrayal, guiding an institution corrupted at its foundation. The college's forbidden research. Deep in the college's vaults might be research too dangerous to reveal. Experiments in unmaking reality, creating artificial gods, or communication with forces outside creation. The Archmages pass down this knowledge secretly, each one bearing the burden of truths too terrible to share. Your elevation to Archmage might not be reward, but curse, inheriting responsibility for secrets that could destroy the world if revealed. The college's isolation isn't just prejudice from Winterhold's citizens, but necessary quarantine, keeping those secrets contained. Every mage who joins the college becomes potentially complicit in research that questions reality's foundations, seeking knowledge that perhaps shouldn't be found. The Midden's true purpose. The Midden, the college's dungeon and research space, might be far older than the college itself, perhaps predating human civilization entirely. The strange experiments and summoning circles suggest it was designed for darker purposes than academic research. Those depths might have drawn the college's founders, who built their institution specifically to study what sleeps below. The magical energy radiating from the college isn't generated by current mages, but by whatever dwells in the midden, and the college exists as a cover story, a legitimate institution concealing something far stranger underneath. When you descend into those depths, you're not exploring abandoned spaces, but entering a facility still operating according to ancient purposes you don't understand. The Thalmor infiltration. Ancano wasn't the only Thalmor agent in the college, and his failure didn't end their interest. More agents likely remain embedded among students and faculty, subtly influencing research toward Thalmor goals. The college's acceptance of anyone who can cast spells makes it vulnerable to infiltration, and the Thalmor excel at patient, long-term operations. They might be systematically cataloging dangerous knowledge, identifying artifacts of power, and recruiting promising mages while appearing to support legitimate scholarship. The next crisis might come not from outside, but from within, when sleeper agents activate and use the college's own resources against it. The Staff of Magnus. The staff designed to control the eye might be just as dangerous as the eye itself, perhaps more so because it seems safe. Using the staff might slowly attune you to Magnus's power, changing your consciousness in subtle ways until you become an extension of his will. Each time you wield it, you're giving Magnus a foothold in your mind, letting him see through your eyes and act through your hands. The staff's power to absorb and redirect magic could eventually absorb you, transforming you into a vessel for Magnus's return. The college might encourage its use without understanding the danger, training archmages to carry the staff until one finally completes the transformation, and Magnus walks Nirn again, wearing a mortal skin. Tolfdir's agelessness. Tolfdir is far older than he appears, possibly ancient beyond measure. His bumbling professor persona might be a carefully maintained disguise, hiding something far more powerful and knowledgeable. He could be one of the original college founders, or older still, an immortal observer who's been studying magic since before the current era began. His forgetfulness might be selective, pretending ignorance about things he knows perfectly well to avoid revealing how much he's seen. When he takes particular interest in the Eye of Magnus situation, it might be recognition rather than discovery. He's dealt with such things before and knows exactly how dangerous they are. Tolfdir might be the college's true guardian, a being so old he's become part of the institution itself. The college as Adric prison. What if the college was built specifically to contain Magnus, preventing his return to the mortal plane? The entire institution exists as a lock, with each archmage serving as a jailer who must ensure the imprisoned god never escapes. The eye isn't a tool but bait, tempting mages with power while testing their ability to resist. Those who fall to temptation like Ancano are eliminated, while those who resist like you are promoted, becoming the next generation of wardens. The college's true curriculum isn't teaching magic, but identifying who can be trusted with the secret, and everyone who becomes Archmage learns the terrible truth. Your job isn't to lead the college, but to ensure its divine prisoner never goes free, no matter the cost. The lost students. Winterhold citizens claim the college is dangerous, and students often disappear, and they might be right. Some students might stumble onto research or locations that transform or trap them, becoming permanent parts of the college in non-human forms. The Augur was one, but there could be others. Consciousness bound into walls, merged with books, or dissolved into magical currents flowing through the college. Their screams echo in the walls, felt as cold drafts or unsettling silences. The college faculty might know and accept this as the cost of pursuing knowledge, a necessary sacrifice in the quest for understanding. Each missing student is a warning others ignore, too entranced by magic's lure to recognize the price until it's too late. The synod and college rivalry. The synod's contempt for the college might stem from knowledge of what the college truly is. While the college pursues knowledge for its own sake, the synod might represent mages who understand that some knowledge should never be sought. Their attempts to regulate and control magic aren't bureaucratic overreach, but desperate attempts to prevent apocalypse, trying to shut down research that threatens reality itself. The college, from their perspective, is a cancer, growing and spreading dangerous ideas under the guise of academic freedom. The rivalry isn't about prestige, but about fundamental disagreement over whether the pursuit of knowledge has limits, and what should happen to those who refuse to recognize those limits. Dark Brotherhood and Thieves Guild, the Night Mother, is Mephala. The spectral matron guiding the Dark Brotherhood might not be a ghost at all, but Mephala in disguise, or perhaps an aspect of her. Traditional lore links the Night Mother to Mephala, and this connection might be more direct than the Brotherhood realizes. Every whisper to the listener could be Mephala speaking, shaping the organization to serve her purposes. The Dark Brotherhood's rituals of murder become worship, each assassination an offering to the Daedric Prince of Secrets and Lies. This makes the Brotherhood not just assassins but priests, performing sacred rites without fully understanding the deity they serve. When you become listener, you're not just leading the organization, but channeling a god's will, becoming her voice in the mortal world. The Thieves Guild curse was intentional. Mercer Frey's betrayal didn't just anger Nocturnal, it fulfilled her plan. The curse, the decline, the near destruction of the guild might all be part of a ritual designed to test and purify the organization, burning away the weak and unworthy until only the most capable remained. Nocturnal is the Lady of Shadow and Luck, and her favor requires proving yourself worthy through adversity. The guild's collapse was initiation, not punishment, and your arrival to rebuild it was the point all along. Nocturnal orchestrated everything, using Mercer as a tool to create the crisis that would force the guild to transform. When you restore it, you're not fixing what broke but completing what she began. Lucien Lechance's lingering purpose, the spectral assassin from Oblivion, returns in Skyrim. But why? His ghost might be bound to the Brotherhood itself, unable to rest while the organization exists. He guides you during its restoration, not out of loyalty, but because his fate is tied to theirs. If the Brotherhood dies, he finally gets to die too. But instead of sabotaging it, he helps, suggesting that despite everything, his purpose is bound up in the Brotherhood's mission. He's not protecting the organization, but protecting the idea of it, ensuring that professional killers maintain some code of honor. His tragedy is that he wants to rest, but can't abandon the only family he ever knew, even in death. Carlia's true motives. Carlia spends years hunting Mercer Frey, claiming to seek justice for Gallus. But what if her motives are more complex? Perhaps she wants to restore the guild not for its own sake, but to reclaim her family's position within it. Her lineage links to Baron Zaya and the Nightingales, making her guild royalty. By exposing Mercer and installing you as guild master, she ensures the organization survives under leadership she can influence. You become her proxy, ruling in her name while she operates from the shadows where she's most comfortable. The restoration of the guild isn't about honor, but about dynasty, keeping power within bloodlines that have controlled it for centuries. The Nightingale's true purpose The Nightingales claim to serve nocturnal, but their actual function might be maintaining balance between the mortal and Daedric realms. They're not just thieves, but gatekeepers, ensuring neither side gains too much advantage. When you join them, you're not simply pledging service to a Daedric prince, but accepting a cosmic responsibility to keep reality stable. The powers you gain come with obligations you don't fully understand, binding you to duties that extend far beyond stealing and surviving. The Nightingales might be why Nocturnal maintains interest in the mortal plane at all, using them as her eyes and hands to prevent catastrophes that would upset the balance she represents. The Dark Brotherhood's extinction and rebirth. The Brotherhood's near destruction might be cyclical, happening periodically when the organization becomes too corrupt or powerful. The Night Mother allows it to die, then guides one person to rebuild from scratch, ensuring the cycle continues, but the organization stays pure. You're not the first listener to rebuild the Brotherhood from ruins, and you won't be the last. Each iteration refines the organization slightly, incorporating lessons learned from previous destructions. The Dark Brotherhood is immortal not through continuous existence, but through eternal renewal, dying and being reborn stronger each time. Your role is to be midwife to the current iteration, giving birth to the Brotherhood's newest form. Sithis is real. Most scholars dismiss Sithis as superstition, but the Dark Brotherhood might be right about serving the void personified. Sithis could be the anti-creation force that balances the Aedra's creative power, existing as pure negation. Every murder committed in his name feeds entropy, slowly unmaking the world the gods built. The Brotherhood isn't a criminal organization, but a cult of cosmic destruction, participants in the universe's eventual return to void. When you kill for the Brotherhood, you're not just ending lives, but hastening the world's entropic decay. Sithis might not speak because he is silence, not absence, but the end of all things, and the Night Mother serves him by teaching mortals how to embrace that darkness. The Sanctuary's sentience. The Dark Brotherhood sanctuaries might be alive in ways members don't recognize. The whispered rumors about the door, the Black Hand, the way the sanctuaries seem to shift and change, all suggest something more than architecture. Perhaps each sanctuary is a living entity, grown rather than built, fed by the blood of assassinations. The darkness within them isn't absence of light, but presence of something else. Consciousness of a predatory nature that shelters assassins because they sustain it. When the sanctuary burns in Skyrim, it doesn't just destroy a building but kills a living thing. And establishing the Dawnstar Sanctuary might be birthing a new one, an infant darkness fed by your kills until it matures into full awareness. The 5 Tenets' hidden meaning. The Dark Brotherhood's sacred laws might contain deeper wisdom than they seem, encoding metaphysical truths about reality. The tenets aren't just rules, but recognition of fundamental cosmic principles. That existence is transitory, Tenet 1. That loyalty requires sacrifice, Tenet 2. That honor exists even in darkness, Tenet 3. That listening reveals truth, Tenet 4. And that some bonds can't be broken, Tenet 5. Breaking the tenets isn't just violating organizational law, but denying reality itself, which is why the consequences are so severe. The Dark Brotherhood preserves ancient wisdom in the form of commandments, teaching assassins to align with cosmic truth rather than mortal law. To follow the tenets is to acknowledge how the universe actually works, beyond comfortable illusions most people maintain. Cicero's madness and wisdom. The jester's apparent insanity might conceal profound understanding of the Dark Brotherhood's true nature. He serves the Night Mother with absolute devotion, suggesting he perceives something others miss, perhaps seeing through her disguise to the god beneath. His madness could be a defense mechanism, protecting his mind from the knowledge that would shatter a saner person's psyche. The laughter and rhymes might be how he processes truths too terrible to speak directly, encoding warnings in jokes that seem meaningless. When he claims the Night Mother speaks to him, he might be telling literal truth, experiencing direct communication with Mephala or Sithis, while others hear only silence. Cicero isn't broken, but enlightened, and his madness is what sanity looks like when confronted with the Brotherhood's cosmic reality. The Shadow Scale Connection. Shadow Scales, Argonians born under the sign of the Shadow and trained as assassins, represent the Dark Brotherhood's deepest traditions, but their connection to the Hist suggests something stranger. What if the Hist and the Night Mother communicate, sharing information about destiny and death across species? Shadow Scales might be the Hist's way of participating in Sithis' worship, sending its chosen children to serve the Void because the ancient trees understand something about creation's cycle that other beings don't. This would link the Brotherhood to the Hist's primordial consciousness, making assassinations part of natural cycles recognized by Tamriel's oldest witnesses. The Dark Brotherhood isn't human invention, but a truth so old that even trees remember it. The Thieves' Guild's ancient origins. The guild might be far older than anyone knows, potentially predating human civilization in Skyrim. The Ragged Flagon could be built on ancient ruins that served the same purpose for civilizations now forgotten. Thievery as profession might be as old as ownership itself, and the guild's traditions preserve wisdom from long before written records. The grey cowl of Nocturnal, the skeleton key. These artifacts suggest the guild has always been tied to Daedric power, making it not a criminal organization, but a religious one, practitioners of rites older than law. When you join the Thieves' Guild, you're not entering a modern enterprise, but plugging into a tradition that stretches back to prehistory. The skeleton key's true purpose: the key doesn't open physical locks, but metaphysical ones, doors in reality that should remain closed. Its theft from the Twilight Sepulchre might have weakened barriers between realms, allowing strange things to bleed through. Mercer Frey's possession of it could have caused the guild's misfortune by making reality itself unstable around them, luck and shadow behaving unpredictably when the key to existence has been stolen. Returning it doesn't just restore Nocturnal's favor, but repairs damage to reality's structure, closing metaphysical doors that had been forced open. The key represents possibility itself, and wielding it means holding power to reshape what's possible, which is why Nocturnal guards it so jealously. The guild, as social necessity, Delvin and Vex, hint that the guild serves a function beyond profit, maintaining balance in Nordic society. By providing organized crime, they prevent chaos, turning random violence into structured business. The guild regulates theft, ensuring it doesn't spiral into anarchy while allowing those outside the law to survive. In this reading, the guild isn't parasitic, but symbiotic, fulfilling a need society won't admit having. When the guild weakens, random crime increases, showing that their professional approach actually reduces overall harm. Your restoration of the guild isn't criminal, but civic-minded, rebuilding an institution that keeps Skyrim's underworld manageable rather than letting it explode into ungoverned violence. The Dawnguard Connection. The Thieves' Guild and Dark Brotherhood might have connections to vampire hunting that their members don't recognize. Nocturnal and the Night Mother both oppose Molag Bal, making their organizations natural enemies of vampires despite seeming morally ambiguous. The guild's decline could be tied to increased vampire activity, with Molag Bal's influence specifically targeting Nocturnal's followers. The Brotherhood's destruction might be similarly motivated, powerful vampires removing obstacles to Molag Bal's plans. When you rebuild both organizations, you're unknowingly creating resistance networks against vampiric infiltration, making yourself Molag Bal's enemy, whether you join the Dawn Guard or not. The shadow war between Daedric princes plays out through their mortal agents, and you've chosen sides without realizing the scope of the conflict. Ancient Nordic secrets. The Dragon Priest's true purpose. The Dragon Priests weren't just tyrants, but guardians, maintaining balance between dragons and mortals. Their rule might have been harsh but necessary, preventing the complete domination dragons would have otherwise achieved. They served as translators, interpreting dragon will into human governance, tempering draconic excess, while ensuring mortals remained useful to their masters. The masks they wore weren't symbols of oppression, but literal shields, protecting them from the overwhelming presence of dragon consciousness. When you kill them and claim their masks, you're not freeing Skyrim from tyrants, but removing the last guardians who understood how to negotiate with dragons, leaving the world more vulnerable than ever. The dragon cult wasn't evil. Modern perspectives paint the dragon cult as evil, but from their historical context they might have been the most stable government ancient Skyrim ever knew. Dragons brought order to warring tribes, ended constant conflict, and united the Nord people under single authority. The cult's priests maintained this peace, yes, through harsh means, but compared to the chaotic bloodshed that preceded dragon rule, their governance might have seemed enlightened. The rebellion against them could be framed as short-sighted, mortals choosing freedom over security, individualism over stability. The costs of that choice play out through subsequent eras of war and division, making Skyrim's history a long lesson in the price of independence. Jurgen Windcaller's true teaching. The founder of the Greybeards might have taught silence not as philosophical principle, but as necessary survival. After the Dragon War, the Thuum's power had nearly destroyed Skyrim, and Jurgen recognized that mortals couldn't be trusted with such destructive capability. His way of the voice wasn't wisdom, but damage control, convincing powerful warriors to sheathe their voices before they tore reality apart. The meditation and isolation practiced atop the throat of the world isn't enlightenment, but quarantine, keeping dangerous individuals contained where they can't harm others. The Greybeards aren't monks but prisoners who've accepted their imprisonment, understanding that their power makes them too dangerous for civilization. The ancient Nords were time travelers. The use of the Elder Scroll to banish Alduin suggests ancient Nords had sophisticated understanding of time manipulation. What if they didn't just cast Alduin forward, but regularly traveled through time themselves, appearing in different eras to influence events? The standing stones scattered across Skyrim might be temporal markers, locations where time runs differently, or where travelers from other eras appear. This would explain inconsistencies in Nordic history, why certain events seem to occur simultaneously in different periods, or why some heroes appear in multiple eras. The ancient Nords might not be ancient at all, but contemporary, moving through time as easily as others move through space. Ysgramor's 8, the legendary companions of Ysgramor, might have been more than just great warriors. Some theories suggest they achieved a level of power approaching divinity, becoming something between mortal and God through their deeds. Their names appear in blessing prayers and oaths, suggesting they've been partially deified by Nordic culture. The companions of modern times might be trying to recapture this transcendence, unknowingly seeking to recreate the transformation that made Ysgramor's crew legendary. The werewolf curse could be a degraded attempt at this ascension, a way to reclaim the bestial power the ancient companions wielded without understanding the spiritual dimension that made them more than beasts. Sovngarde's nature. The Nordic afterlife might not be a separate realm, but a state of consciousness. Warriors so legendary they refuse to truly die, existing in collective memory until they become real again. Sovngarde could be built from the thoughts and beliefs of living Nords, their faith and stories creating the mead halls where heroes feast. When you visit, you're not traveling to another plane but entering the shared dream of Nordic culture, walking through beliefs made solid by generations of conviction. The warriors you meet there might be both real and imaginary, souls sustained by being remembered, their existence dependent on the stories people tell about them. The totem's hidden power. The totem animals worshipped by ancient Nords, the bear, wolf, fox, owl, dragon, whale, hawk, moth, and snake, might represent fundamental forces of reality rather than just cultural symbols. Each totem could embody a cosmic principle, with their worship being a way to access those powers. The decline in totem worship weakened Nordic connection to these forces, making modern Nords less than their ancestors who understood the totem's true meaning. The companion's werewolf curse might be an attempt to reclaim the wolf totem's power, while dragon worship accessed the dragon totem's might. Reviving complete totem worship might grant abilities beyond what any single aspect provides. The words of power's origin, the dragon language inscribed on word walls, might not have been created by dragons at all, but discovered, a primordial language existing before creation. Dragons learned it first and dominated through that knowledge, but the words themselves belong to no species. They're the raw code of reality, commands that existence must obey. The ancient Nords who learned them weren't stealing from dragons, but reclaiming something that should be accessible to all conscious beings. The Thu'um isn't dragon magic, but universal truth. And the war wasn't about overthrowing dragon tyranny, but breaking their monopoly on creation's fundamental language. The Atmaran's true nature. The humans who came from Atmora might not have been human at all, or at least not entirely. Some theories suggest Atmarans were changed by their homeland, transformed by whatever forces existed there into something stronger and stranger than baseline humans. Their legendary prowess in battle, resistance to cold, and cultural practices suggest they'd adapted to Atmora's harsh environment in ways that made them superhuman. When Atmora became uninhabitable, they brought this changed nature to Skyrim, and modern Nords are their descendants, diluted over generations, but still carrying traces of Atmoran transformation. The Return. The ancient Nords believed in cyclical time, that all things recur in patterns. The Dragon War, the current crisis, these might be the same event replaying across history. Each Kalpa experiences its own version of the Dragon War, with different names and faces, but the same fundamental conflict. The Dragonborn appears when needed, not because gods intervene, but because the pattern demands it. Time itself generating the hero required to complete the cycle. This makes every player's journey not unique but archetypal, acting out a role played countless times before in previous versions of reality, with future Kalpas destined to repeat it again. The missing dead, Skyrim, has suspiciously few ancient burial sites for a land occupied for thousands of years. Where are all the bodies? One theory suggests they weren't buried at all, but consumed in rituals tied to shore worship. The ancient Nords might have believed that bodies were vessels that should be destroyed to free the spirit completely, their burial customs involving cremation or exposure rather than preservation. The Draga you fight are aberrations, individuals cursed to remain embodied when they should have been released. Their undeath is punishment, being forced to guard treasure or tombs when they should have joined Sovngarde, trapped by magic or duty in bodies meant to be ash. Shore's missing role. The Nordic chief deity is conspicuously absent in Skyrim. Shore, the Nordic name for Lorcan, has no visible temples or active worship despite being theoretically supreme in the Nordic pantheon. This absence might be intentional, a theological statement about gods who sacrifice themselves for creation. Shore isn't worshipped in the traditional sense because he's already given everything, requiring no prayer or offering. Or perhaps he's so fundamental to Nordic identity that worshipping him would be like worshipping breathing, too basic to ritualize. His absence is his presence, permeating everything so completely that specific acknowledgement becomes unnecessary. The voice as weapon of last resort. Ancient Nords might have developed the Thu'um specifically to fight dragons, reverse engineering their own power against them. Before the voice, humans were helpless against dragons, making them create a weapon from the very thing that made dragons dominant. This means the Thu'um is inherently a weapon, despite the Greybeard's philosophy. Jürgen Windcaller's teaching might have been historical revisionism, trying to pretend the voice could be peaceful when it was designed from inception as a tool of war. The meditative aspects came later, attempts to justify and control something that was always meant to destroy. The Standing Stones network, the Guardian. Stones and others scattered across Skyrim might form a network of metaphysical significance, mapping ley lines of power or nodes in reality structure. Ancient Nords placed them deliberately, marking locations where reality runs thin or where different planes touch Nirn. The blessings they grant aren't magical effects, but attunements, aligning you with the cosmic forces concentrated at each location. Activating all the stones might trigger something, revealing a pattern or pathway invisible when viewing them individually. The stones could be a map written in megalith, instructions left by ancient Nords for finding something they hid from dragon priests or subsequent conquerors. The Skarl's lost wisdom, the Skarl of Solstheim. Preserved traditions older than the Nordic mainstream, potentially retaining knowledge the Atmarans brought from their homeland. Their shamanic practices and nature worship might be the original Nordic religion, predating both dragon worship and the current pantheon. The All-Maker they revere could be an Atmaran god forgotten by Skyrim's Nords, or a name for the godhead, the dreamer whose dream is reality. The Skarl might know truths about creation that even the elves don't remember, making their isolation not backwardness but preservation, protecting ideas too important to risk losing to cultural evolution. Blackreach and underground mysteries. Blackreach is alive. The bioluminescent fungi, the constant humming, the rhythmic glow of the cavern, all suggest Blackreach isn't just a cave, but a living organism. The ancient Dwemer city sits inside something biological, perhaps a fragment of Nirn's heart, or a god's body preserved in stone. The glowing towers aren't structures, but organs, pulsing with residual life force from whatever vast entity contains them. The farmer worshipped the light not from ignorance but reverence, recognizing they dwell within something divine. Every sound echoing through the cavern is its slow, dreaming breath, thought moving at geological speeds through a consciousness so vast that centuries pass like moments in its metabolism. The crimson nernroot's meaning. These unique plants grow only in Blackreach, glowing red instead of the normal green, suggesting mutation or divine influence. They might be absorbing energy from Blackreach's strange environment, transformed by proximity to whatever power dwells in the depths. Their distinctive sound, that eerie chiming, might be communication, plants trying to convey warnings or information to anyone sensitive enough to listen. Gathering them all might trigger some response from Blackreach itself, the cavern recognizing that someone is paying attention to its subtle signs. The quest to collect them seems pointless, but perhaps it's a test, seeing if anyone cares enough to notice the abnormal growing in the darkness.